Good morning, and thank you all for coming out to Banking and Consumer Affairs. I'd like to call it to order. Banking is our game, but affairs are not allowed. So we are only going to do Banking and Consumer Affairs. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Representatives Boyd, Bricken, Camper, Faison, Haston, Lynn, Powell, Vaughn, Chairman Powers. Here. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Great. Thank you all. Do we have any personal orders or announcements this morning to get started? Anybody on the committee? I see none. Okay, housekeeping. Item number 1, House Bill 2055 has been rolled 1 week. Oh, yeah. Item number 3. House Bill 375 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 5, House Bill 2733 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 8, House Bill 2505 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 10 on the addendum calendar, House Bill 859 has been requested by the sponsor to be taken off notice. Since it has been calendared 3 times without objection, it is referred to the special calendar to be published with the final calendar. Okay, and I think that's all right now. I'd like to remind you that our final calendar will be next Wednesday. So today at 3:30 is the last day to put your bills on notice for this committee, today at 3:30. And we have a calendar today, but first we're going to go out of session to hear a presentation from Commissioner Gonzalez, Director Roush, Director Dunn, and Aaron Bradley on financial exploitation. This has been a real concern for everybody, especially in the senior community. So we're so glad to have you all here today. And with that, we're going to go out of session and hear you. And Director Roush, you're first one up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. We appreciate you all allowing us just a few minutes. I'll be quick. What we're doing is bringing to you a concept that we are working on, and that I understand there may be some legislation that may be forthcoming. There is some information out of the from the DA's conference that they are working on, and so which will play into this this effort. Financial exploitation, I don't have to really express to you all the challenges that we see with it, right? Currently, we have over 76 million baby boomers in our country, and there are 5 million elder abuse victims each year reported, and that's more than child abuse and domestic violence combined. And so the real concern is the financial exploitation, over $36.5 billion in loss. And in the state of Tennessee, that is, the number is large. Now, we understand that this number is probably way underreported as well. And so we have a concept. We've been working with the financial institutions, with law enforcement, with, quite frankly, a number of organizations to figure out how we get in front of this. How do we start preventing this, right? The one thing I hear from the DAs constantly is when we learn about this, the money's gone. And when we start the investigations, it's too late. These individuals end up on the rolls of government because their means have been stolen. And so what we have talked about and what we are proposing is we're going to start at the TBI. We're going to create basically what's called a 911, a call center for this issue, where our financial institutions can call in and talk with one of our our experts and get information on next steps, and to determine if they should implement the pause law, which this body has passed, as well as educate the public and these institutions on that specific law, as well as other pieces of exploitation. And so that's the concept. And then the piece of legislation you may see coming forward is from the DAs. What they need is someone for us to hand off to. When we looked at it originally, we looked at law enforcement, some 500 and plus 525 agencies in the state of Tennessee. It would require us to have a contact at every one of those locations when we receive the call to hand off. And the DAs said what they would be willing to do, if it could be potentially funded, would be have 31 investigators, one at each of the DA's offices, that would be solely responsible for elder issues, and obviously financial elder exploitation being one of the main pieces. And so we absolutely support that concept. We don't know what the volume of calls will be. We've got a pretty good idea based on what the financial institutions have told us. We think we could do it without additional resources, but we're not sure. So at this point, our support is with the DAs to get that piece. And we also understand that's a budget ask that wasn't in the budget proposed by the governor, so it would have to come in on the other side. And so what we would suggest, if the 31 positions couldn't be done, is do a pilot program. Pick 4 jurisdictions, small, medium, large, and let us pilot it to see how it'll be effective, and the potential of learning the things we need to know as we push this out. Financial institutions are all behind us. I'm sure Commissioner Gonzalez can express those as well.
All right, thank you very much for that. Yes, this is an issue, and we appreciate you bringing that forward, and I think it's a great idea. Just keep in mind, we still have a supplemental budget that'll be coming out end of March, 1st of April, so we might have time to get a little bit of money in there instead of waiting till the next fiscal year. And next up, we have Commissioner Gonzalez. Would you?
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Certainly appreciate to be able to be here to talk about financial exploitation. First thing I'd like to say is, as you know, and as the director and others have said, then this is a huge issue all over the country and here as well. I do think that there's been progress made in the state because of everybody that's in this room and throughout state government, but most of all from financial institutions that are on the front line, tellers and others that are having to deal with these issues on a daily basis and having to make hard judgments when issues are brought to them. They have to confront them, and they have to make decisions as to how they may affect their customers. So in light of that, one of the things that we've done as a department through examinations is to survey institutions to understand what is happening and what they're doing. So let me just give you a brief overview of what we've been able to discover through our examination process. Most institutions surveyed by the department have formal or informal policies related to elder exploitation. Most institutions provide training to employees on detecting and dealing with these issues. And most depository institutions and mortgage companies monitor for elder abuse. We also noted the following actions occur a little bit less frequency, and I'm sure it's based on the issues that they're confronted with. Collaborating with adult protective services or law enforcement agencies, stopping a power of attorney, refusing or delaying transactions. And here's some of the common challenges that we discovered in talking to institution management. They talked about educating and communicating with elderly customers effectively about suspected abuse or common scams, effectively training personnel on exploitation, common scams, how to interact and protect customers, identifying timely, comprehensive resources that facilitate customer or staff education, and identifying and collaborating with the appropriate government agency upon discovering suspected abuse. And on that last point, as a number of us recall that are on the Elder Abuse Task Force, we did have testimony from a bank explaining how they sought to deal with an exploitation issue some time ago, but really didn't have a clear understanding of how to resolve the issue or really what government agency to even go to seek help. So because of that issue, what Director Roush is talking about is so critical to have this hotline set up so that institutions in real time can be able to talk to the TBI and their folks as to what might be an approach to take for these issues. So let me just say, we really commend Director and the TBI for what they're doing here. It's going to be a heavy lift. We've all got to get behind it and support it. But I think this is a major step forward. So with that, I'll yield.
I agree, and thank you for that. I think that, and we'll have a few little Q&A here after it's over with, but we appreciate that and appreciate your all support. And I'll just go right down the line to Mr. Bradley. Would you care to state your name and who you're with?
Be happy to, Chairman. Aaron Bradley. I'm the director of the East Tennessee Area Agency on Aging and Disability, part of the Human Resource Agency in Knoxville, Tennessee. Chairman Powers and I go back, so if you ever want to know what he did 25 years ago, just let me know. Chairman, I appreciate your kindness and your willingness to hear from us today. I can't say enough good words about the folks on this panel all the way through. They've been engaged on this issue for a number of years. Let me start with a quick story out of Oak Ridge, and I think this was one of the things that led to Director Roush and his team looking at a statewide solution. A detective in Oak Ridge about 3 years ago, Wendy Zokowski, decided this was a passion of hers. And she went around and met with all the banks and credit unions, and she basically said, call me if you see something suspicious. After she created those relationships, in a 10-month window when she launched this program, she saved older people in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, $3.5 million in 10 months. What that proved to us as a coalition, as an agency, is there is a solution. That's the first thing we learned. The second thing we learned was how big this problem is. In 10 months at $3.5 million in one community, now you could argue that Oak Ridge is a little different when it comes to older populations and money, but it's not unlike many, many, many cities and towns in our state. So if it's $3.5 million because of one detective in one community in 10 months, we know what the scope of the problem is. It's estimated that it's $200 to $400 million a year is stolen from people over age 65 in this state. And as Director Roush said, $35 billion nationally. I think $400 million is a low number. I'll give you 3 stories. Just in the last year, we staff a coalition that's made up of banks and district attorneys and law enforcement, and we have for 20 years. First story I'll mention is a 95-year-old great-grandmother. Grandson moved in to help out. Well, over the next 18 months, he helped himself to $350,000 of her money. And he did it through a debit card with a PIN number because she trusted her grandson to do some shopping for her. Some of those transactions were in states, 3 and 4 states over. Matter of fact, one of the transactions was a $40,000 diesel Ford truck. That, I think, the banking industry has kind of dealt with. Chairman, you and I talked about this, where they set limits sometimes on debit cards. I wish banks and credit unions would talk to the depositors more and say, let's not put that debit card against very much money. Let's put a limit on it. There's a lot that could be done to prevent that kind of thing going forward. A lot of banks are already doing it, but more could do it. This week, God is sometimes gives us information at the right time. He blesses us every day. But he gave me some information on Monday about 2 clients in East Tennessee. One had taken, in 9 months or 10 months, had taken $10,000 in cash, mailed to her, and deposited it in a Bitcoin machine in East Tennessee. And what I said to Chairman Powers earlier, if that happened in my town in East Tennessee, Chairman, if that happened in my town, it's happening all across this state and likely all across this country. Now, we contacted the United States Postal Inspection Service. They sent an agent out. They validated what was going on, and they basically said to this woman who was unknowingly involved in criminal activity, you shouldn't be doing this, and if you keep doing this, law enforcement may be up here to arrest you because in the scheme of things, you're a mule. $10,000 in 9 months that was sent to her in cash, and she was unwittingly putting it in a Bitcoin machine. Her sister, 2 years older, got caught up in a romance scam. And it doesn't make any sense to me how someone who might be a widow, who might be lonely, would give away in a period of a year over $100,000 to someone they don't know, they've not met, they're not going to meet them, but they're in love. Now, the first time I was involved in this 15 or more years ago and this story came up, the person who was presenting said, has anybody in the room, and there were 300 people, anybody in the room ever done anything stupid for love? Well, you know, everybody kind of laughed. But it's a very strong emotion, and folks do things that sometimes they normally would not do. But that case came to us on Monday. What I'm saying to you, Chairman, and this committee, and to the legislature is this. This problem is bigger than anybody ever thought. Even me, I've been dealing with this for a long, long time. So as the speakers have already said, we've got to come up with a solution to try to keep that money in the bank, because once it's gone, even the best prosecutor cannot recover that money. The other thing I want to mention is...
About 30 more seconds, okay?
Yes, sir. I'm over already, I'm sure. About 50% of all the assets in this country are held by people over age 50. So we know why criminals are looking to take advantage of older people in our state and beyond, is because they're holding that money. The other statistic I want to leave you with is about 50% of all the financial exploitation in our state, and again nationally, is at the hands of family and friends. About 75% of that 50% is related to drug addiction. So please, 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 as you talk to your friends and colleagues anywhere and everywhere in this house, remind them that older adults are being abused in every way possible by those folks who are addicted to drugs. And if they can't get the money easy, sometimes it turns violent and physical, and we see it all the time. And it's just a scourge that I know as a state of Tennessee we can do better. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for not asking the question if any of us have done anything stupid for love, because we would have had a lot of hands go up in here too. Thank you, and Director Dunn, if you would, your name and your position, please.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, it's an honor to be here before you, Chairman, and to the members of this committee. I do apologize. I'm a little under the weather today, but wanted to be here anyhow. I do have some prepared remarks, but I think for the sake of time, I'll just speak to you more candidly. Of course, TCAT is the state's designated agency on aging. Our goal is to bring together and leverage programs, resources, and organizations to protect and ensure the quality of life and independence of older Tennesseans and adults with disabilities. I do want to touch on a few statistics that Director Bradley had touched on, which I think are important to Director Rauch and I, as well as Commissioner Gonzalez. In 2020, the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center received over 791,000 complaints. 28% of the victims were over the age of 60. That equates to the $1 billion in fraudulent activity and losses to our seniors. According to the ARP's Public Policy Institute, individuals over 50 and older are particularly susceptible to fraud and financial exploitation, as they own 67% of all bank deposits. In 2017, the General Assembly enacted legislation known as the Pause Law. It came through your all's committee. The authority to delay or refuse to conduct transactions that permit the disbursement of funds when financial exploitation of elderly or vulnerable adults is suspected. That is what the law does. Likewise, last year you all reenacted the State Elder Abuse Task Force, this time focusing the task force on the causes and impact of financial exploitation in our state. TCAT recently published a report on behalf of the task force detailing its findings. It's on our website. I encourage y'all to take a look at it. We'd be happy to bring a copy by if you'd like to have one. During the meeting of this task force, members highlighted that while financial institutions have improved tools to report cases when aging Tennesseans are exploited financially, employees of financial institutions do not always have clarity how to report incidents of suspected activity or whom to report them to. At the task force meeting, Director Rouse, of course, discussed this 1-800 hotline. And I think it's important, and I believe that all of you all would agree, the less we can do to infringe on regular business activities, the better. So if we can establish a resource where the banking industry can pass off any of this suspicious activity to law enforcement, they can go on about their business, and we can continue to mitigate the wrongdoing by malicious bad actors. I believe that is what Director Rouse is attempting to do. Of course, all of the bankers love Commissioner Gonzalez because he's a wonderful man, and the banking association, I would have to say, should be committed to, because they have freely engaged with all of us and want to be a part of the solution to the problem. And this is one area where everyone, I think, is in agreement on. So if we could do something with the 1-800 number, I think it would be phenomenal. And I am really here to support these gentlemen and Director Rouse in that endeavor. He has become a friend to me and a mentor. They've been working on this for a long time. I am new to the table. I am trying to learn, listen, but I know enough to know that if we could do this, it would be good for the state of Tennessee. It would be a win for all of you. It would be a win for our elderly population. It would be a win for the banking industry, and I think law enforcement. So I'm in support of it, Mr. Chairman. That is why I'm here today. Thank y'all for indulging me. If there are any questions, I stand by. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Director Dunn, and I think we're all in agreement with that. And just Director Rouse, real quick, if you can come up with a number, I don't know how difficult that would be through physical review or whatever, that we need to maybe apply this year to get this off the ground, then maybe we can work with some people in the governor and finance and everything, and see if we can at least get enough money to get it off the ground and get it started. I'll be glad to help you in that in any way.
Thank you, Chairman. We will do that.
And now I'm going to go. We got questions. Chairman Bricken, you're up first.
What a great panel. And again, as a banking executive and someone that has dealt with this firsthand and has seen it at my bank over the years, we certainly need to put resources and coordination on this issue. I love the idea of the pilot program, because before you ramp up full scale, I think a pilot program will ferret out the situations and a lot of how to then build the program. So I think that has an awful lot of merit. I would like to ask, because this is certainly a mucky issue in senior exploitation, because often it is family and friends, and it usually starts off very minor, just by the caregiver, by something, and then they start figuring out how easy it is to start siphoning money away from someone they're caring for, and then it just seems to mushroom. And by the time it is detected, the money is gone. So, but I don't know if we have good statistics on the percent of the losses that are third-party fraud losses versus what I call insider caregiver losses. Does anybody can address?
In a global way, I can address that, Chairman. Looking at statistics in Tennessee and nationally, it's about a 50-50 proposition. 50% of the money is being taken by professional thieves and con artists and fraudsters, and about 50% is at the hands of family and friends. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said what you did about it starts slow. What we're seeing, is this?
Yeah. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that was all so profound. So You may have, you may have
yes, I
heard
know.
me, but
And it's
50
worth repeating.
Oh, thank you, sir. About 50/50 is the numbers in Tennessee. And what happens, you're absolutely right. It starts slow often with a caregiver or a family member, and then it ramps up. What we've noticed is that it ramps up big when an older person winds up in the nursing home or in the hospital. If they have an episode, sometimes family and fraudsters will just come in and clean that person out. So if they come out of the hospital, a lot of times they have no money left when they need it the most. A lot of it, as I mentioned, is related to addiction. But fraudsters have gotten so sophisticated. In this example I shared with you earlier with the $100,000 and also the $10,000 for the Bitcoin, these fraudsters are counseling these victims on how to talk to the banks and credit unions, what to say, what not to say, how to keep the transaction low so it don't wind up on anyone's radar screen. These tactics are phenomenally sophisticated. And we look at these cases and think, how in the world could someone fall for this? And it has to do with isolation, loneliness, and fear. Those are the three characteristics that drive this kind of abuse. Now, we have a lot of folks in our state that fit that bill. Fearful because their husband has passed away, fearful because they may run out of money, and then lonely and isolated. Pandemic has made it 10 times worse in the last 2 years. So you are absolutely speaking to the choir because you've got it exactly right as far as how it starts.
Chairman Bricken.
Just one final comment. And certainly, we don't want to put any more burden on banks on operating kind of policies or procedures. But one thing that I think wouldn't overly burden it, and we have tried it at our bank, is for elderly people when they open accounts once I say you identify someone that's becoming older, is to try to have on record a trusted advisor contact that we know is someone that we can reach on behalf of that customer to kind of either, one, verify what's going on, or to kind of maybe jump in to talk to that elderly person and before things just get out of hand. So I'll just throw that out.
The example, if you don't mind me
Mr.
saying,
Bradley.
the example that I shared with you about the great-grandmother and $350,000, a lot of the local institutions in Knoxville and Knox County adopted that policy because what happened, they were saying if they had had someone to call, they could have likely stopped this early in the process. So I'm so pleased to hear you say that. I think a trusted member, they don't have access to the account, they don't co-own the account, but they're there for the bank or the financial institution to call if they see something suspicious. I think that'd be huge.
All right. Thank you. And one thing, going back to what you were talking about, the debit card or check card, and I think you and I talked about this, a lot of banks now are putting a limit on it when they first take it out, and then you can raise that limit or you can have that limit completely taken off. And I know the bankers are been working on that, and I went through that myself where you had to actually raise the limit because they stopped any kind of transaction and went over that limit. Representative Lynn, you're next.
Thank you for talking to us about this, and I know we've been looking at this for years. We have put some things in place. Can you talk about the things we've put in place? How are they working, and what are we learning from that, and do we have suggestions for how to improve that?
I would say to you all, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, one of the challenges that we have right now is a lack of data. There was a comptroller's report which was extremely thorough on financial exploitation. I would encourage you all to take a look at it. Comptroller Mumpower did a phenomenal job with that, and they really looked at this in depth. And one of the issues that they raised was an inadequate amount of data on this. And I think that's one of the other things that the Director Rouse is trying to achieve here, is that if you set up a pilot, we could do this in a fiscally conservative way. If you set up a pilot and it's a minimal program, as law enforcement deals with inquiries, as they interface with the banking institutions, we then perhaps could compile some data where we could perhaps extrapolate and have a better idea of what these things will mean to the state of Tennessee. I myself have not seen the legislation. I know Director Roush has talked about some numbers. Commissioner Gonzalez has worked on some data. But I believe that there is some consensus that if a pilot program were to ensue, that may be a great start for better answering the questions that you have as to the prevalence of the problem.
Yes, I'm sorry. Did you want Commissioner Gonzalez, please?
I was just going to mention again that through our examinations, we're surveying institutions. And so here's the common challenges that institutions have raised. And one is just educating and communicating with elderly customers. I think it's even been suggested of having a media campaign in Tennessee to bring awareness to this issue. Certainly, effective training is always an issue, and understanding where there's resources. Chairman Bricken, and just understanding what government agency, we mentioned this before, of course, that's the reason that Director Roush and the TBI are coming up with this hotline number is just to help institutions understand where to go. That was the testimony that we had by one banker who had an issue in front of them at that very time, and they were trying to do the best they could, a small institution with limited personnel, and it can be overwhelming for the frontline folks to truly understand where to go when an issue comes up.
Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman. Banks and credit unions that I talk to and have for a number of years are doing a yeoman's job trying to protect their depositors of all ages. But they are frustrated that they don't have support outside their branch or outside their door. We often hear that we would love to have law enforcement engage quicker, more robustly. Adult Protective Services in Tennessee does a good job, but there's not enough staff and resources for them to respond in real time. The call center that Director Roush is talking about kind of gets to that response to the banks and credit unions quickly. And I think that's the frustration that we're seeing when you're talking about banks and credit unions. The pause law that has been referenced is a wonderful, wonderful tool. I've never worked in a bank, and I haven't owned a bank. Chairman Brickens, you might subscribe to this idea. If I ran a bank somewhere, I would not want to be the bank in the community known to older adults as the place where you could not get your money out. Now, I'm guessing that's part of the impediment here, and I absolutely, if I ran a bank, would be saying the same thing. Let that be the reputation of the bank down the street, not here. So I think the pause law is there. It's a great tool. I think it's underutilized, but I think with the call center and law enforcement and APS bolstering a response, I think banks would use it more. Ultimately, if every bank and credit union used it, the criticism about we can't get our money would go away, right? So I think that would be my response.
Thank you, Director Roush.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. One is the laws do work when we use them. And so I think what happens and what I've heard from the financial institutions is there's not a consistent response by law enforcement. And, it depends on which jurisdiction you're in when you call. And no knock to my previous organization that I was with, but that call would go to a call center, basically, that what we called teleserve. And I know what the answer that they gave for years because I was over that unit for a while. And that answer was, this is a civil matter. You'll need to contact an attorney. Well, it's not a civil matter, right? And so there's some education that needs to be done clearly with law enforcement. But this provides, and again, the concept wasn't mine. This concept actually came from the financial institutions themselves. They're the ones who said it'd be nice if we had a 911 call center just for this issue. And when my team heard that, they were like, my gosh, we do these all the time. We got 800 lines coming into the TBI. That's an easy lift for us. And so when we presented that back to the financial institutions, they were all like, yes, because then there's some consistency in response. There's some consistency in the information and the advice, and frankly, there's the brand of the TBI that's involved in this. And I think that gives some comfort to those who are calling in and understanding that they're getting some advice that is solid based on law, and that they would then be able to, again, our hope is to be able to connect it with the DA's offices, where then they would have an investigator that takes it and runs with it, contacts the bank, starts to look at the information, and helps in that pause time that we are limited to under the law. And so helps them, and immediately they were able to determine, is there something going on here, or if not, and then do we release the money or do we continue to hold it?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Leader Kemper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for really bringing this issue to us to really take a deep look at. I've had people who've been taken advantage of, older people with dementia setting in, and people want to borrow money from them, and they forget who it was. And people know that they forget, so they never pay them back. And they take them to the bank, and the bank said, well, they went through the drive-through. I never saw them. So I do think it's good to have the trusted advisors. When I had people coming to me about this, I had that set up for my mother at a bank she's been banking with 30 some odd years. And so they know her and they know me. So I have that kind of trusted advisor thing. If they see anything suspicious, they'll call. And we set limits on her accounts and things like that. But it is a real issue. I agree with the chairman about a pilot program where we can kind of get a sense of what the issues are, how can we solve them, collect the data, analyze it, and then put the proper resources in place to go after the things that's been identified in the pilot. So I would hope that's something we can get done, Mr. Chairman, maybe in a supplemental budget. I think that's a great idea. Lastly, I don't know if you all seen any of this, but I have two very good friends of mine who had people that they knew, trusted, part of the family, been around for years, grew up with them, who eventually befriended their aunt or uncle or somebody in their family and convinced these people to give them power of attorney to act on their behalf. And they just, they wiped them out. They took all kind of land, all kind of resources, changed the beneficiaries. They did a lot of horrible things to these older people, and I do agree with the isolation and loneliness is an issue. One of them had recently lost her husband. This girl befriended her, somebody we knew, we grew up with her, but had family acres and acres of land in Somerville. It's all gone, and we can't find the girl anymore. She's left. She's gone. Wiped her out completely, and she ends up in the hospital and passes away. And it's like nothing you can do about it. It's done. She had a power of attorney, but it's a real problem on multiple levels. And I appreciate the financial institutions being concerned about it and wanting to do something about it and bringing it to the attention of law enforcement. So the collaboration, I think, is great. And we have a really good opportunity to do something good for our citizens here. So I appreciate this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And anybody else have another comment or anything? Mr. Bradley.
20 or 25 years ago, when we started our East Tennessee Elder Justice Coalition, an investigator at Oak Ridge came to the meeting, and after about 3 meetings, he said these words: when you're thinking about this population, the amount of money they control, he said there was a famous banker one time, his last name was Sutton, and when the FBI caught him, they asked him a question: why do you rob banks? and you may remember what he said. He said that's where the money is. That's where the money is, and that's why these criminals are targeting our older citizens. And Chairman, thank you so much, and members, we can make a difference and do better, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and thank all of you for coming out today. We really appreciate this, and I think we learned a lot, and I think we've got some things to do, and I know I and everybody here on this committee willing to help do that. So thank you all for coming out. Okay, and we're going to go back into session and take up the regular calendar. Yes. Okay, and the first one is item number 2. And House Bill 2463 by our friend Representative Calfee. Representative Calfee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a,
Second. Got a motion and a second. Got a motion and a second.
okay.
Ready to go.
Thank you. This is a comptroller's bill, and it makes government more efficient and run better. And some of our counties and cities that have, are self-insured on workers' comp have trouble making a deadline of December 31st on filing their report because of their audit cycle, and this changes that date to March 31st.
We have the question on the bill. Any objection? All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. You're moving on to full commerce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Calfee.
Committee.
Item number 4, House Bill 2310 by Representative Griffey. Are you in the room? He was. Okay, yeah, we're going to roll that one to the hill. Item number 5. No, we skipped number 5. Item number 6, Representative Mitchell. He's coming back into the room. And House Bill 2396, Representative Mitchell, you're up. You're on deck. And do we have a motion on the bill? And a second? Got a motion and a second. And there is an amendment on the bill. And what's the drafting code that you have on it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. My assistant didn't put the amendment in there, but the amendment, it just comes from the TMA to exclude hospitals and medical professionals. Is that the correct amendment?
I have drafting code 014570. Let me check.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay, so we need a motion and a second on the amendment. Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. And we got it added on to the bill. Okay, let's talk about the amendment then, please.
Okay. Well, let's just the bill is just a simple bill. The federal government, OSHA, has notified TOSHA a few years back that they have to raise their fines up to the standard federal limit. Most states are already there, and Tennessee has not. So if they do not do this, they've been told, it's a possibility, unlikely, but it's a possibility that OSHA could come in and run the program. So, it just makes good sense, and it's financially lucrative to the state. And since we are 6th in the nation in workplace deaths, it just makes sense we should do this without the feds having to force us to do it. So that's the basis of this bill.
Okay. So we're still on the amendment.
Yes.
Is that primarily what the amendment you were talking about?
The amendment,
Session?
I'm pretty sure, just excludes out medical profession.
Okay. Is that what you all have? Hold on just one second. Let me look up the amendment.
Okay.
Is it on here? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we need to go ahead and adopt the amendment onto the bill, so we need a motion in a second and do that. Okay, we got that, okay. I thought so, okay, so the amendment's on the bill.
You got your motion second, but as you need to actually go through a motion for adopting it. So all in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Opposed, say no.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's, technically, we got a motion and a second, so we just need to vote on it. So all in favor say aye. All opposed? No? Okay. The ayes have it. Now, we're back, and the amendment makes the bill, correct? Okay,
Yes.
okay. We just wanted to get in the proper posture there before we, and, okay, is there any discussion on the bill? And Chairman Vaughn.
Representative Mitchell, I'm curious, we didn't hear anything from Workforce or TOSHA on this bill. What got your attention that TOSHA didn't bring this to us and tell us that this needed to be done?
Representative, you're exactly right. I'm curious myself why they haven't brought this forth, because I think, the feds more or less suggested to them to bring legislation, and they haven't. So I just thought, if they're not going to do it, since we're sixth in the nation in workplace deaths, someone needs to do it.
All righty, thank you. And one thing that I would point out, I see that there's a positive fiscal note, which can be, it's a nice shiny thing that people would like to sometimes chase, positive fiscal notes, but at the same time, you have to ask, at what cost are those revenues coming into the state due to our businesses?
And Representative Vaughn, I hope it doesn't have a positive fiscal note, because that means all the employers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we have a safe work environment for all our workers in Tennessee.
Vaughn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I support that last statement you had. I do. This, to me, this is a matter that needs additional, I need additional background before I can vote on it, before I raise up fine limits for folks. But that's the way that that's my own personal view.
Yeah, I understand, but like I said, I'm just doing what the federal OSHA has instructed our state to do, and they're just not doing it. So I think it comes abundant upon us. It's our responsibility to step up and do this. The federal government told the state to lower the BAC for several years. We didn't do it, so they said, we're going to take your federal highway dollars, and you know what? We did it. So do we want to wait till OSHA has to do something like that before we recognize a problem and fix it?
Okay. Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And sponsor, I appreciate your enthusiasm for this. I am, kind of surprised that we haven't heard from TOSHA on this or anything. And, I know that TOSHA does a really good job, and we operate within the guidelines that are set up by the federal government through OSHA, but we take a lot of pride in having our autonomy here and doing things as much as possible in kind of a Tennessee way. And I just have a lot of reservation about upping this penalty, from a Class C to a Class B, and then ramping these charges up, and I saw it increase state revenue. It does at the expense of businesses. So in today's, well, first of all, we take a lot of pride in having a very pro-business climate here in Tennessee, and the proof is in the pudding. We're seeing a lot of companies and businesses relocate here, and I just think this runs contrary to that spirit that we have here, and so I'm against this bill. So I just want to say that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, Chairman Boyd, I understand, but it doesn't cost businesses if they're doing the right thing. That's the bottom line. And the proof is in the pudding. You're exactly right. We're sixth in the nation in workplace deaths.
Okay, thank you. Representative Lynn.
I think if this was only about workplace deaths, we would definitely, agree with you, but it's not. And there's some things that can happen at a business that the business doesn't even realize might be a violation. And I have a really good example. A customer went into a restroom, there was no hot water. And the business didn't even realize the hot water was out because it was the public restroom, didn't even realize it. And this customer, though, decided to, call TOSHA. TOSHA came in, and, they did cite the business for not having hot water. Business got it fixed very, very quickly. But those kind of things can happen with business. And I want to tell you one thing Tennessee TOSHA does that is excellent. Tennessee TOSHA has a service where something like that happens. They will come into your business. Maybe you've got a few of them or whatever. They'll come in and they'll look around and they will kind of consulting you and point out the things that are going wrong. A lot of business owners don't know about that. It's one of the best things TOSHA does. These people can then fix those things and correct those things. And I really find that most business owners, especially if they're going to go through that program, they want to get those things corrected because they want a safe workplace for their employees. I don't think businesses are doing nasty things and taking advantage of their employees. They want their business to run well. It saves them money. Workplace accidents cost them money. They don't want that. And like I said, TOSHA has wonderful services, but I don't see why we need to hit our businesses harder, especially at this time when we're seeing inflation, wages rising, the instability in the world and the federal government. I don't think this is any time to be doing something like that.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let's make it abundantly clear. No one is throwing a rock at TOSHA. No one has said they're not doing a good job. But the federal government, OSHA, has told them they will bring these fines up to their standards or else. It's kind of like us as state government. We like to tell local government, you will do this or else. Well, they've got a big brother too. It's OSHA. And they're being told, you will do this or else. Don't believe me. Ask them if they've been told.
Thank you. And we got to keep in mind that the states created the federal government and we also created the local government. So we do get to tell them what to do from time to time. Leader Kemper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, looking at your amendment, it appears to me that if they take the corrective action, then they won't be penalized. Is that correct?
Right.
So,
Representative Leader Kemper.
So if TOSHA identifies a problem similarly that she described, they came in, the business made a corrective action, fixed everything, then they won't get a penalty. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well,
Representative Mitchell.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair. That would probably be up to the TOSHA inspector and who's doing it. So, I'd say I wouldn't want to speak for them, but I think it would be in their judgment call. Those guys have been doing it long enough. They know a serious situation and one that corrective action could be taken, and they're not looking to fine anyone. But again, no one's looking to fine anyone. No one's looking to say TOSHA's not doing anything right. The bottom line is they have to do this. There's no questions about it. So, we can either not do it with this bill, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen one way or the other.
Thank you, Mr.
Leader
Sponsor.
Kemper.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Bricken. Question's been called on the bill. Any objection? With no objection, we're going to be voting on House Bill 2396. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The noes have it. Sorry, Representative Mitchell.
Hey.
And
Thank
you have another bill
Yes, sir.
too, I
Yeah.
believe.
And this one's an even simpler bill. We'll make it easy today.
I have to do something procedurally?
Yes, sir.
That bill failed? Okay. And now we're on to the next bill. Sorry.
Oh, I understood.
Just a procedural thing. Okay, House Bill 2398 by Representative Mitchell. Representative Mitchell, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, this just requires an employer to state the minimum and
I need a
maximum.
motion second. Got a motion and second. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This requires the employer to state the minimum and maximum salary or salary range for a job promotion or transfer opportunity advertised within the state. Employer would be an employer of 50 or more employees. This is something that's commonly happening around the country. Many states have put this in, and it's they get better applicants when the applicant knows what the salary is. You know, when a job seeker's looking and they don't see what the salary is, you know, they just go on to something else. And secondarily, this also, you know, if Representative Lynn applies for the job and Representative Powell applies for the job, no matter who gets it, they should get the same wage if they're equally qualified. So that also solves that problem within our state. And with that being said, I'll take any questions.
Okay, let me ask you one. So you're just talking about a salary, just the range, right?
Right.
I mean, because it could be, you know, varied depending on education, background, experience,
But
whatever.
it has that minimum. It has that minimum,
minimum.
and that's what matters most of the time.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on the bill? Question on the bill? Without any objection? Without objection, we're going to be voting on House Bill 2398. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. So the noes have it too. The bill fails. Thank you, Representative
Hey,
Mitchell.
thank you, Committee. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Item number 9, House Bill 1274 by Representative Powell. Representative Powell, you're recognized. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I do have an amendment. The amendment is written to ensure the bill doesn't conflict with what we passed last year in regards to unemployment benefits legislation. I would also change the effective date to December 1st, 2023.
Okay, and the drafting code on the amendment, please.
Yes, the drafting code is, let's see, sorry. There we go. 13790.
Okay, yeah, that's what we have. So do we have a motion on the amendment? And a second? And we have a second motion and a second on the amendment. You are recognized on the amendment.
All right, thank you. I explained the amendment. If you know, anybody has any questions, I can get into the specifics of the bill if we adopt the amendment.
Okay, do we? Okay, yes. We have to have discussion. Okay. Time out 1 second.
So we adopted the amendment.
Okay, yeah, do we have any discussion on the amendment? Do we have any questions on it at all? Okay, so all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. So we have adopted the amendment. So we're back on the bill as amended. Representative Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. So I brought this and shared it at the end of last session and, you know, worked on this throughout the year with different stakeholders in the business community. In fact, there was actually a whole session on this topic at the Southern Legislative Conference that I had the pleasure of attending that our own speaker was the chair of. And, you know, essentially what this would do is establish a voluntary shared work employment benefit program that would allow certain employers to submit to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development for approval a plan to reduce work hours in exchange for employee access to a certain level of unemployment compensation benefits. Programs such as the Shared Work and Employment Benefit Program are designed as a reduction alternative to layoffs for employers who have been faced with a reduction in available work. It also allows an affected group of employees the ability to collect unemployment benefits while working reduced hours. Work-share programs let businesses temporarily reduce their hours of their employees instead of laying them off during economic downturns. Technically referred to as a short-term time compensation. The goal of work-sharing programs is to reduce unemployment. Work-share programs benefit business, workers, and states. Businesses retain their trained workforce for easy recall to full-time work when economic conditions improved. For example, instead of laying off 20% of a business's workforce, a participating employer in the program under this bill may reduce all hours in payroll across its entire workforce or a segment of its workforce by 20%. The affected employees receive 80% of their regular pay from the work-share employer. They also would be eligible to collect partial employment insurance benefits from state to offset reduction, at least in part. You can see the fiscal note shows that this would lead to an overall decrease in the number of unemployed individuals. I wanted to also add that 26 states, plus the District of Columbia, have this, including Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Kansas, Missouri, and I think this is a worthwhile program. Hopefully we don't face a recession or downturn like we did previously, but if we do, I think this is great flexibility for companies and businesses in the state of Tennessee to maintain their workforce and come out on the other side strong. Open any questions.
I'm going to start off with the first one. You were talking about they can receive the reduced unemployment. How long a period of time can they receive that? Is it just like what it is right now? Is that the
It's
same
just like it
limit?
is right now, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So it doesn't change that at all.
Okay. And Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you'll see I signed on to this bill. It's one of those that, frankly, I wish had been my idea to bring it forward.
We can make that happen if you need.
The principle behind it is this, and that's, I'll give you an example of back right after the turn of the century, the construction business was in a free fall, and the design business soon followed, and I was the owner of a design firm. And we had to decide whether or not we were going to lay off 10 employees or whether the 80 of us would go to a reduced hour schedule. What happens when you eliminate those 10 jobs full-time, they qualify for unemployment, but also it allows people to get into the habit of not having a job. It also may allow them to go seek a different industry, and it removes them completely from a hiring pool from the industry at which they just left. If we have a situation to where reduced hours can be offered to a workforce and their income is supplemented through that those reduced hours by the unemployment funds that the employer has been paying into the account, what it does is it keeps that workforce available and trained for that employer, yet it does not pass all of and allows them to use the unemployment funds that they have to keep those folks to where they're able to receive benefits on top of their reduced salary structure. It's a permissive program. Employers don't have to participate in it. It sets up the mechanism by which this can happen. And again, I saw the presentation at SLC over at the Hyatt earlier this year, and that was when I knew, because of my practical experience with it, once you lay people off and effectively terminate them, even if it's for a short time, they become eligible to seek other opportunities, and they're not available for you as a hiring pool to get back into the business as a whole. We have gone over this with our State Chamber of Commerce. They have indicated a positive reception to it, and so I think it's something. It provides us another tool. Whether it's a self-induced economic downturn like this last time, or whether it's an economic downturn, this will help businesses weather the storm and be able to maintain their hiring pool, in my opinion.
Thank you. Do we have any other discussion on the bill? Representative Lynn.
Okay, so I definitely understand the concept better now. I have a question. Employers don't have to participate in it, but should the employer participate? Might an employee be able to say, well, I'm not going to participate in it because just in case this business does end up going out of business, I do want to reserve my full unemployment benefits for a later time, and I will just suffer the decreased hours now. So does the employee also have to participate if the employer chooses to participate?
Yeah, so it's an across the board, essentially. So the company makes a decision, it applies across the board. So, the hope would be all employees would want to maintain their work. So, but again, the way this would go is it would go through the department, and they would approve any application. And then, they would have to stick to it. There's different protocols in there to make sure that everybody's adhering to this. But essentially, that would be at the employer would make that decision.
Chairman Vaughn.
And it's my understanding, Representative Lynn, that even today, employees do not have to file for unemployment, even if they receive. So while they may suffer reduced work hours, it would still be up to them whether or not they accessed benefits during that time.
That's right.
And that's the thing that I like about this bill is that it's permissive on all fronts. It provides a mechanism and a tool that we don't currently have, but it's not forcing anyone to do anything. It just makes it available as another option.
And I'll add to that,
Representative Powell.
Chairman, there's even provisions here, make sure if somebody wanted to get outside work to supplement it, they would have to stay within the certain hours and report all that. So I think it squares away everything to make sure at the end of the day that if employers want to have this option, I think it's a great thing to have. And I appreciate you, Chairman, for your comments and support as we've worked through this over the last year.
Okay. Anyone else? Any others got a question on the bill? We're going to be voting on House Bill. I'm sorry, I forgot the number. This one? No. I'm sorry, right here. Okay. House Bill 1274. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. And you're moving on to full commerce. Thank you. And item 4. Okay, and sorry, Representative Griffey, you weren't here when we went by a while ago, but we rode you to the hill, so you're recognized on item number 4, House Bill 2310.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion? Got a second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
And we have a few amendments if you want to cover those first.
Yes, amendment number 13919 is an amendment that I filed. It doesn't make the bill, but it adds a provision for the money transmitter to only do the transmission if a customer provides their name, address, and a valid form of identification, and the entity is required to keep a copy of the identification for 3 years for law enforcement purposes.
I'm sorry, we were trying to get everything into proper position, so we need a motion and a second on this amendment. Motion. And second, okay, all in favor say aye. All opposed? No. The ayes have it. Let's go on to, there's another amendment. Chairman Vaughn actually has an amendment, 014651. Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this amendment does, it does not require that the identification be kept for 3 years. What it does is it makes the transaction to be more like someone if you're carded to buy alcohol or cigarettes at a convenience store. It applies the same principle to this transaction as that. Also, there is no fee charged, or fee or tax. I think the words are interchangeable in this instance. My amendment does away with that aspect of it, and the reason being is that we've seen this bill before, so we understand its purpose, unless the purpose has changed from the sponsor. But my position is that I'm trying to keep the bill from imposing what looks like now to be almost an $8 million tax on people who are engaged in money transfer, whether they are legal citizens, born citizens, visitor citizens with the right papers, illegal, whatever. This would prevent illegals because they wouldn't have the paper from being able to send money out of the country, but it would also allow people who are sending money for whatever reason, whether it be for charitable, family needs. We don't get into why they're sending money. I know there's a vigorous federal program that tracks law enforcement issues with regards to sending money out of the country. And what this does is this makes this more of an everyday transaction, as if somebody was going to buy a pack of cigarettes at a convenience store. You show your identification, let them know that you have the ability, that you're not here illegally, and that you can go on about your business without collecting a tax on it.
Okay, great. And we need a motion and a second on that amendment. Got a motion and a second? Okay, and all in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. So that amendment's on the bill. Do we have any discussion on that amendment? On the bill, I'm sorry. Back on the bill. Yes, Rip Griffey.
Well, I wanted to request a roll call vote on this, but I was waiting for you to get your housekeeping matters in position, so I would like to request a roll call vote.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we have, yeah, I'm sorry. We have to do it before any vote is taken. I'm sorry. Okay. Representative Griffey.
Okay.
Back.
Thank
back to
you. Members, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, according to the 2009 report by FAIR, which is the Federation of Americans for Immigration report, the United States loses $150 billion annually to foreign money transfers or remittances. And if I could just quote the last conclusion paragraph, although remittances are one of the least discussed aspects of U.S. immigration policy, they create some of the most serious negative effects associated with unchecked mass migration. They siphon off a large chunk of capital that drives U.S. businesses and that generate tax revenue for state and local governments. Indeed, in fact, the 2019 study by FAIR that estimated the cost of illegal immigration to Tennessee estimated that the cost of illegal aliens and their kids to state taxpayers in Tennessee for 2019 was $793 million. What this bill would do, without the amendment, would simply add a $2 fee to these transfers. It's estimated to generate, I believe there's approximately 9 million transfers every year to the total, or for 2020, there were 9 million transfers, and it was an estimated $2.7 billion left the state of Tennessee economy forever, never coming back. That's money that normally goes in and goes to our businesses and local businesses and generates additional business and economic impact throughout the state of Tennessee. We're losing all that money. I've tried to pare this bill down where it's as simple, straightforward, so we could get more data, exactly how much is, where it's going, how much money is leaving the state of Tennessee. That's why I propose a simple $2 fee for the state and $1 for the vendors or the foreign money license agents, so they would not be out additional money for the bookkeeping aspect of it. And that was estimated, I believe, to generate some $82 million per year for these money transfer agents and their authorized agents and vendors. So I would move passage of this bill. I think it's a smart bill. I would ask the committee to please reconsider with the amendment that takes off the $2 fee for the state and $1 fee for the money transfer agents, because if you don't, it's costing them additional money to do this. And this is not a tax on Tennesseans necessarily. It's trying to recover tax that normally would be in our economy that we've lost to the tune of $2.7 billion. So with that, I'll move passage and try to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you. And I know we've talked about this a lot, and I agree with many concepts of the bill, but I can see where we're going to be, if there was a fee on there, that we're going to be catching, not exactly what the intent of the bill is. We're also going to be catching people who are constituents and legal residents of the state that might be sending money to a family member or something overseas. And so, with the amendment, I'm okay with it, but, we're trying to add a fee or a tax or whatever we want to call it, and it really is, but it would not only be catching people that you're trying to, it's going to have other ramifications to catch other Tennesseans, so, but.
May I respond?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, he had his own, yeah, go ahead and respond.
I did want to inform the committee that there is a provision on the bill that if someone produces a military ID or a spouse produces a military ID, they would not be subject to the fee. And the fee is $2 per transaction. That's all it can be any amount of money, but it's a minimum base level $2 fee to try to get a capture on what's going on and have these records available for law enforcement. Of course, if someone's here illegally, what they'll do is give the money to someone that's here legally and get them to make the transfer. And by capturing the identification, that would allow law enforcement additional records to review and find out what's going on in our state and actually how much money may be leaving the state. That money could be drug money for all we know, but we don't know unless we take some kind of action. So again, I'd move for passage.
Yeah, and just like the other bills that, if we were talking about, like beer or tobacco or whatever, if you get somebody else to do that for you, then that's already a Class C misdemeanor. So there's going to be that provision that's already built into it with the amendment. So we have a question on the bill. Okay, so we're going to be voting on the bill as amended. House Bill 2310. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The ayes have it. You're going to be moving on to I'm sorry. Moving on to. Oh, yes. We're going to have legal roll the amendments all into one, and you're moving on to full commerce. Okay. Oh, sorry. Announcements or anything coming before the committee? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned.
Okay. I know.